Hi, this is A Course in Miracles, Read and Discuss, and today we are going to be reading Chapter 9 of A Course in Miracles. It's called The Acceptance of the Atonement, and this section is Section 5, The Unhealed Healer. The ego's plan for forgiveness is far more widely used than God's. This is because it is undertaken by unhealed healers and is therefore of the ego. Let us consider the unhealed healer more carefully now. By definition, he is trying to give what he has not received. If an unhealed healer is a theologian, for example, he may begin with the premise, "I am a miserable sinner and so are you." That was a quote. If he is a psychotherapist, he is more likely to start with the equally incredible belief that attack is real for both himself and the patient, but that it does not matter for either of them. I have repeatedly said that beliefs of the ego cannot be shared, and that is why they are unreal. How then can, quote, uncovering, unquote, them make them real? Every healer who searches fantasies for truth must be unhealed, because he does not know where to look for truth, and therefore does not have the answer to the problem of healing. There is an advantage to bringing nightmares into awareness, but only to teach that they are not real and that anything they contain is meaningless. The unhealed healer cannot do this because he does not believe it. All unhealed healers follow the ego's plan for forgiveness in one form or another. If they are theologians, they are likely to condemn themselves, teach condemnation, and advocate a fearful solution. Projecting condemnation onto God, they make him appear retaliative and fear his retribution. What they have done is merely to identify with the ego, and by perceiving what it does, condemn themselves because of this confusion. It is understandable that there have been revolts against this concept, but to revolt against it is still to believe in it. Some newer forms of the ego's plan are as unhelpful as the older ones because form does not matter and the content has not changed. In one of the newer forms, for example, a psychotherapist may interpret the ego's symbols in a nightmare and then use them to prove that the nightmare is real. Having made it real, he then attempts to dispel its effects by depreciating the importance of the dreamer. This would be a healing approach if the dreamer were also identified as unreal. Yet if the dreamer is equated with the mind's corrective power through the Holy Spirit is denied. This is a contradiction even in the ego's terms, and one which it usually notes even in its confusion. If the way to counteract fear is to reduce the importance of the mind, how can this build ego strength? Such evident inconsistencies account for why no one has really explained what happens in psychotherapy. Nothing really does. Nothing real has happened to the unhealed healer, and he must learn from his own teaching. His ego will always seek to get something from the situation. The unhealed healer therefore does not know how to give, and consequently cannot share. He cannot correct because he is not working correctively. He believes that it is up to him to teach the patient what is real, although he does not know it himself. What then should happen? When God said, quote, "Let there be light," unquote, there was light. Can you find light by analyzing darkness, as a psychotherapist does, or like the theologian by acknowledging darkness in yourself and looking for a distant light to remove it while emphasizing the distance? Healing is not mysterious. Nothing will change unless it is understood, since light is understanding. A, quote, "miserable sinner," unquote, cannot be healed without magic, nor can an, quote, "unimportant mind," unquote, esteem itself without magic. Both forms of the ego's approach, then, must arrive at an impasse. The characteristic, quote, "impossible situation," unquote, to which the ego always leads. It may help someone to point out where he is heading, but the point is lost unless he is also helped to change his direction. The unhealed healer cannot do this for him, since he cannot do it for himself. The only meaningful contribution the healer can make is to present an example of one whose direction has been changed for him, and who no longer believes in nightmares of any kind. The light in his mind will therefore answer the questioner, who must decide with God that there is light because he sees it. And by his acknowledgement, the healer knows it is there. That is how perception ultimately is translated into knowledge. The miracle worker begins by perceiving light and translates his perception into sureness by continually extending it and accepting its acknowledgement. Its effects assure him it is there. A therapist does not heal, he lets healing be. He can point to darkness, but he cannot bring light of himself, for light is not of him. Yet, being for him, it must also be for his patient. The Holy Spirit is the only therapist. He makes healing clear in any situation in which he is the guide. You can only let him fulfill his function. He needs no help for this. He will tell you exactly what to do to help anyone he sends to you for help, and will speak to him through you if you do not interfere. Remember that you choose the guide for helping, and the wrong choice will not help. But remember also that the right one will. Trust him, for help is his function, and he is of God. As you awaken other minds to the Holy Spirit through him, and not yourself, you will understand that you are not obeying the laws of this world, but the laws you are obeying work. Quote, "The good is what works," unquote, is a sound though insufficient statement. Only the good can work. Nothing else works at all. This course offers a very direct and a very simple learning situation and provides the guide who tells you what to do. If you do it, you will see that it works. Its results are more convincing than its words. They will convince you that the words are true. By following the right guide, you will learn the simplest of all lessons. By their fruits ye shall know them, and they shall know themselves. All right. This section is particularly difficult to understand, you might say. So let's try to break it down, make it a little simpler. The section is called the Unhealed Healer. And the truth is that we are all unhealed healers. Everyone. Everyone who is here or thinks that they're here is an unhealed healer. But some are of that profession where they are, Jesus uses examples of the theologian and the psychotherapist. The theologian is the old school, and the newer school is psychotherapy, which is basically the same thing in a new form, is what Jesus is saying, because both of them are, really saying the same thing, which is you have a problem. Either for the theologian, Christian theologian generally, you are a sinner, right? And you need to be healed. That's the starting premise, that you are a miserable sinner and you need salvation. And the psychotherapist's starting premise is that there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your head, and I can help you as a therapist. We can understand how, I can help you to understand your mind, and in doing so, your mind will be healed. Now, Jesus is, there, obviously, there might be some usefulness in both of those methods, but Jesus is trying to highlight the method that his approach, and he's saying that this is really the approach I am teaching, and that I have been trying to get across, and he's trying to get across in this whole course over and over again, and basically it's, instead of seeing that the person has a problem, the other person is a sinner, or the other person is crazy in the head in some way or another. Rather, you see the perfection of that person. You see the light that's in them, and in seeing the light and seeing that there isn't really a problem, and they are still one with God. Just they are still whole and healed in this very moment. In doing that, the theologian or the psychotherapist remembers that themselves, right? And that's the message of this whole course, is that as you teach what Jesus is saying, which is as we go through our day and we look on everything with the vision of the Holy Spirit and Jesus, which is really the same thing, then our mind, it will be healed. But the unhealed healer is basically, the idea of the unhealed healer is the person who is basically trying to teach what they have not learned, or trying to heal when they are not healed themselves, which is crazy. But we all do it on some level or another. We're all that unhealed healer. It's like, the example would be when you're giving advice to someone and you don't really do that yourself. You're actually giving the advice to yourself as well. But you don't really do that yourself. You're trying to remember as you're saying it, and generally we can give great advice to other people, but we just can't. Our own lives need work in other ways, at the same time. So it's funny that we do that, but I think the main point, really, Jesus is just saying the same thing here that he's been saying, in a different way. But the main point is that all we need to do is just see, or be open to seeing without judgment. And the flip side of that is be open to seeing as the Holy Spirit and Jesus see, which is the light in everyone and everything. To see the holiness and the wholeness of everyone and everything, to see the oneness of everyone and everything. And in doing that, our mind gets healed. And it doesn't mean that you have to, it means even in those moments where you just can't stand someone, or you hate, you're like, want to tell someone off, or you are telling them off in your mind on some level. But there's another part of you that's just watching your mind. Is not identified necessarily with those thoughts. It's just watching those thoughts and just saying, okay, those thoughts are there. I right now, there's a part of me that really hates that person. I want to write them off. I want to never talk to them again. I want to even wish they were dead. Whatever it is. But there's another part of the mind, your right mind, which is looking at it as the Holy Spirit and Jesus does, which is without judgment, which is just say, okay, that's there, and that's what it means to be in a body, is you have those thoughts, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't judge that. If it might become problematic for you if you act upon those thoughts. But even then, the forgiveness is still there. Remember that everything is either love or fear, right? So if you do act up on those thoughts, you are just afraid. And if someone else acts on those thoughts, they are just in their fear. And is that a sin? No. That's just being in fear. That's not sinful. That's just identifying with the ego, which we all do. And one person might do it in a very big way. Someone might do it in a very small way. It's the same thing. There's no order of difficulty in miracles. So anyway, so all you need to do is get out of the way and let the Holy Spirit, be open to the vision of the Holy Spirit, and not think that you can do that perfectly, what the Holy Spirit does, because no one here can. And if you can, you've gotten to the level of like Jesus, right? And maybe, there may be some individuals that truly are at that level. But most of us who are here working with this course or something like it are not, and the best we can do is just to try to just look at it as the Holy Spirit and Jesus does, and let go of the judgment. At the end, Jesus here actually quotes William James. William James had this philosophy of pragmatism, and basically the philosophy says that the good, or what is true, is what works. The good is what works. And then Jesus does a little spin on it, and he says, it's a sound though insufficient statement. Only the good can work. Nothing else works at all. Meaning, the ego does not work. You may think that it does, but that is because the ego is such a powerful voice, and we are so used to following that voice. But it doesn't work. And as long as we think that it can work, we're that far away from knowing the truth of existence and of who we are, what we are. The more that we're open and that we're able to step away from, step back and just observe our thoughts and without judgment, the closer we become, the closer we get to our true nature. This is also yoga. Yoga philosophy is the eternal witness. Purusha, or the pure consciousness, pure awareness. The closer we can get to that, the closer we are to yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. The stilling the fluctuations of the mind. And Jesus ends here with, "By their fruits ye shall know them, and they shall know themselves." Meaning, it's an interesting way of putting it. You would think he would say, by the fruits you shall know the truth of what I'm saying, which is kind of how he said it in the Bible, in the Gospels. But here he's saying, as you see the light in others, in any other, you will see it more and more in yourself, and you will free yourself. And as you see that in yourself, others will see it in you, and they will know themselves, and you will know yourself, and they will know themselves, and it will happen like that, and you will slowly liberate yourself, liberate your consciousness, and those around you as well. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Namaste.